When it comes to NFL draft prospects, you find that every few years that the league starts to calibrate towards looking towards a certain type of player, certain type of prospect at a certain position based off of these traits or these specific skills or what it could mean and what it could represent. And I think about, you're going to see that more now with quarterbacks coming in and comparing them to somebody like a Patrick Mahomes. You see that, at the tight end position, maybe teams looking for the next Rob Gronkowski or Travis Kelce. Teams looking for defensive linemen, they're going to use Aaron Donald as kind of the benchmark or the standard bearer there. If you're looking at edge rushers, maybe you're looking at somebody like a Von Miller type. Just thinking about players in recent years that have shook up shit in the league and have been dominant at their positions. Everybody tries to look for that next guy that's like them, or they gravitate towards those types of guys. And then every guy that comes along in that position for the next X number of years that exhibits even some of the physical traits or some of the same skills as that other guy automatically gets compared to him. Whether the comparison is perfectly appropriate or even close to appropriate and not even appropriate at all in some cases. Just because you run the same 40 time doesn't mean you're anywhere near the same type of player. You know that these comparisons are going to happen. And with Jaylen Waddle coming out of Alabama, you already know the comparisons that you're going to get. There's going to be a lot of comparisons to Tyreek Hill. And I get it and I understand it. Tyreek Hill has become an elite weapon in an elite NFL offense in the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs, base a lot of their success on what they do offensively with Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. So it certainly makes sense that you want to find guys that are similar to that because you want to mimic some of that success, because you sure as hell would love to be in a position where in 3 straight years you lost in overtime in the AFC Championship game, then you go to and win the Super Bowl, and then you make it back to the Super Bowl to lose the following year. Like most franchises would be ecstatic to have that type of 3-year run. So why wouldn't you want to try and mirror that approach? So you're going to see a guy like Jaylen Waddle with a similar type of size profile, certainly similar levels of quickness and speed, at least to some varying degree. And you're going to see those comparisons because people are trying to envision what he could do based off of somebody very similar in some of those physical traits and athletic aspects and what that guy has been able to do in the league. Now, I will say, I put in the notes as you read in the description box, the Tyreek Hill comparison I put there, it's lazy, but it's appropriate. A lot of times when you're doing these comparisons, it's not perfect. They don't line up perfectly. And I'll talk a little bit here in a moment about where there's similarities and there are some key differences between the two before I start anointing Jaylen Waddle. But I do wonder as time goes on throughout the draft process, if we go into the next few weeks, we'll start to hear more buzz about him potentially being the first wide receiver taken. Because compared to other guys that are being viewed in that similar type of light, the Jamar Chases of the world and the Devontae Smiths of the world, there's one thing that Jaylen Waddle has over them in great abundance, and that is quickness, explosiveness, and speed. Nobody can argue that. He's by far the quickest of the 3. He's by far the most explosive of the 3, the fastest of the 3. And sometimes when it comes to the wide receiver position and other skill positions, speed kills and speed trumps skill in a lot of cases. And you'll see that. You look at last year's draft. That's why Henry Ruggs was taken ahead of Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb. Because Henry Ruggs was significantly faster. Doesn't mean he was a significantly better prospect or player, but an organization's going to fall in love with a guy with that type of speed. And wouldn't you fucking know it was the Raiders? Al must have been so proud. But with Jaylen Waddle, he certainly has similarities to Tyreek Hill in terms of quickness, explosiveness, and speed. I don't think there's any question about that. You can argue whether Cheetah is faster or if Jaylen Waddle is faster, but they're similar. They're on a similar plane. And those types of guys, and especially those types of guys that can also produce at the position they're being drafted for, don't come along every day. So there's no surprise here that even in a wide receiver group the past couple of years that had a couple of other first-round picks in Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs and had another first-round pick there as well in Devontae Smith, that Jaylen Waddle, some people pointing to and saying, he has a chance to be special. He could potentially be the best out of all of them. And he could, because he has that one trait over all of those other guys except Ruggs. But I think Waddle's probably more polished and more ready as an NFL receiver than Ruggs was last year. But it's the quickness, it's the explosiveness, and the speed that translates. And then where you really see that manifest in his abilities in the run after the catch game. Like you get the ball in the hands of Jaylen Waddle, and he can go out and make a big play happen. Like you look at him as a type of guy that you were thinking, like if you were drafting in the 20s and you had the ability to bring him in, he could be a big-time home run type of Percy Harvin type of threat as a rookie. Now, Percy Harvin, we think back, going back to Minnesota, like he came into the league, he shook some shit up initially because he was a versatile weapon that you could deploy in a variety of different ways. Like I can see Jaylen Waddle having some of that similar type of impact because he's absolutely electric in the open field. He can piece together several moves. He's got incredible agility, explosiveness, burst, quickness, and obviously the deep speed that once he gets a step on you, you're probably not going to make it up even if you got an angle on him. He's got that outrun you angle speed that not all guys have in the league. I also love in terms of his abilities in the run after the catch game. Like when you talk about piling up YAC, you want guys that have great vision and great instincts, peripheral vision. And what I saw out of him in Alabama the last couple of years, I think he's got that in great abundance as well. So the type of guy that even if you just have your quarterback turn and he throws a little wide receiver screen, like you get a blocker or two in front of Jaylen Waddle, you feel like every time you do that, you're potentially swinging for the fences. It might not work out some of the times for sure, and you might strike out sometimes. But you could have that once or twice a game that a big play can come just out of that alone, let alone anything else in any other way that you utilize him in the passing game. And I think in terms of separation and his ability to separate, while you look at his route tree and you say it's kind of limited, he's primarily a slant, screen, fly, go pattern type of slot receiver. You could say because of that quickness and that speed, he can get a lot of separation if teams don't get up and press him, if they don't get physical with him, if they let him get off the line with a free release. You let Jaylen Waddle get off the line with a free release, you're fucked, is the point I'm getting at. You don't always have to be the most polished of route runners. Like, I would even say going back in the day, Randy Moss wasn't a great route runner, especially early in his career, on a consistent basis. Now, he worked at his craft and he improved, and I think he got to the point where he got very underrated where, people assumed that he was just this big vertical speed, size freak, which he was, but that's not all he was. Like, he learned the nuances of the position, and he also figured out how to incorporate that quickness and that speed in terms of change of speed to where he could just make a little hitch move. Like you see it in that Thanksgiving game in '98 against the Cowboys when he's running down the sidelines and, he's already got the ball and he's running down the sidelines and it looks like the defender's got the angle on him and all of a sudden he puts in a little hitch, just a little sudden hitch like this, totally stops their momentum and it doesn't break his momentum at all and he goes in for the touchdown in that great, great Thanksgiving game in '98 against the Cowboys. So he doesn't have to be as polished of a route runner as, let's say, his teammate Devontae Smith, who doesn't have the same quickness, burst, explosiveness, deep speed that a Jaylen Waddle does. Devontae Smith is going to have to, he's going to have to adjust and he's going to have to compensate in other places in other ways, where Waddle can in some cases just win based off of sheer athleticism and speed. I think some of the concerns for me is, when I talk about catching the ball and attacking the ball with your hands and catching the ball away from your body, at times he lets the ball get too close into his body, whereas I compared him, to, let's say, a Jamar Chase. I thought Jamar Chase was better more consistently with that. But I will say he does make some big-time, incredibly tough catches. He will drop a few easy throws, but overall seemed like a pretty reliable catcher of the football the past couple of years. I love his upside and potential as a route runner, especially in the slot. You take that quickness, burst, and explosiveness, and you work on fine-tuning your footwork and your body control. Like, he could be somebody that could be a really, really tough cover like a Tyreek Hill. I think a difference when you're talking about him versus a Tyreek Hill, like, we automatically say that it's all quickness, size, etc., and that's not it. Like, Tyreek Hill plays like a dude. Like, Tyreek Hill plays like a grown-ass man. Like, when you watch Tyreek Hill at times, especially when you look at some of the routes he runs, some of the plays that he makes, some of the ways he's able to go win jump balls, he plays like a dude that's 6'3", 6'4". And I don't know that I've seen enough flashes of Jaylen Waddle doing that. Like, that's where I think the difference comes in a little bit. I also think Tyreek Hill is even a little quicker and a little faster in terms of functionality for the game than a Waddle is. But Waddle's speed and quickness is certainly special, certainly special. Now, of course, he suffered the broken ankle in 2020, which, is an unfortunate break. Bad pun there. But there could be some concerns about his size and playing style leading to some potential injuries. And I could certainly see that, because he's not the biggest guy. So it's something you got to think about. And he's a guy that you got to be maybe conscientious of how you utilize him. Now, I would say he certainly provides elite upside as a returner, but that's how he got hurt to begin with in 2020. When you're looking at taking him in the top 10 or the top 15, are you really looking at utilizing him much in the return game? I say that to say, like, one of these big components of strength in Jaylen Waddle's game, you might not get much mileage out of it. Now, you might if you were in the playoffs or in a really big spot and you want to put him back there as like a, oh shit, here we go type of thing. Like, maybe. Or maybe you would. Like, you utilize him like an Antonio Brown type. And you say, yeah, you're our number one wide receiver, but you're so great as a returner. We want you back there too. We want to get our best playmaker the ball in his hands as much as possible. And maybe you do that. But I just wonder if some teams would be concerned about utilizing him in the return game where you would provide additional value as a first-round pick because they're concerned potentially about the risk of injury and taking away of what they do in offense. Now, maybe it won't be as much of a concern as a rookie because they'll be looking for ways to incorporate him into the game plan, whatever team drafts him. They'll be looking for ways to get the ball in his hands. So maybe he'll get utilized more as a returner in year one or maybe even year two. But down the road, how much is he going to utilize there? And I wonder, like, similar to the other Bama guys, and just like with the LSU guys last year, did playing with so much talent on the offensive side of the ball hide him or help make it easy for him? Like, was there a piece of, if he would have been in a different system, he would have been utilized even more and given more opportunity to be shown and utilized in more ways that would have shown him even better? Because when you look at him now, it was kind of limited, like I mentioned, in terms of the routes that he type of routes that he runs. Like, it wasn't utilized in a variety of different fashions. Like, you can say, well, he lined up some on the outside and some in the slot, etc. Yeah, but look at how he was actually utilized from those positions. I will say this, like, I look at Jaylen Waddle and I say, there's enough skill there to go along with the quickness, the burst, the explosiveness, and speed that he's certainly worth a first-round pick. There are going to be the concerns about just how polished he is as a wide receiver, just how much work he's going to need to do in terms of his route running. He's also going to have to figure out a way to play more physically against press coverage because he can certainly get engulfed by physical defenders, especially those that are able to get their hands on him at the line. But I will say that if you're playing him off the line a little bit and you're playing him out of the slot, it's going to be really, really challenging for some of those guys that might typically guard him in the slot that might be of a similar size profile. It's not going to have the same success, so you might be able to mitigate some of that risk. He's adequate with his hand fighting, but I would like to see him get stronger and more physical. I see some of the will in terms of like as a run blocker. Like I see some will there, so I think it's there, but he's just got to let it show more. I think Jamar Chase is a little bit safer in terms of all-around skill, but it would not surprise me at all that even compared to Chase or Devontae Smith, that Jaylen Waddle would potentially in 3 years be viewed as the best out of these three. There are reasons for concern, like is it just because of his quickness, burst, speed, explosiveness? It doesn't hurt, and it certainly doesn't hurt to have it. Like, he has that in abundance, and he has a significant advantage over the guys. But we've also seen plenty of these types of guys flame out in the league over the years, especially when they're highly drafted. So is he a guy that I would stake my reputation on and say he's going to be an absolutely can't-miss guy? No. And frankly, I don't know, based off of what I've seen out of the receivers so far in this draft class, I don't know if I would say that 100% about any of them. But do I feel good about Jaylen Waddle's chances to be a player and a potential difference maker in an NFL offense? Yes, I do.